All right, we will begin momentarily. We just give everybody a few minutes to log on. And we have our slide set that I'm sharing today. That'll be available on our event site. We'll also link it underneath the description in our YouTube live stream. So just bear with us momentarily while we wait for a few more people to join, or give them just a few more minutes to jump on. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation today. So thank you for joining us. I'm Olivia Patchell. I'm the Family and Consumer Science Extension Agent for Currituck and Camden counties. I have the slide deck, as I might have mentioned earlier if you weren't here, that I'm presenting today. It's available on the event site. If you registered through Eventbrite and are joining us via Zoom, you can receive that there. If you are on YouTube, at the conclusion of this presentation, I'll make sure to upload that in the description part of the YouTube live stream. So today we're going to talk about managing stress and a healthy diet. And of course, as a reminder, I am recording this session. And if you do not wish to have your likeness recorded, make sure that your camera is off. You can always chat us if you have any questions in the chat pod on Zoom or in the chat feature on our YouTube Live. If you have any questions after the fact, you can contact me. My contact information is on the event site as well as on the Currituck Extension website. And I'd love to help you addressing any issues you have about dieting and eating healthy. So this is the last in our series of mental health. So we discussed earlier in the month about physical activity, being mindful. And then this is my favorite and why we left it for last, because I have a lot of information to cover, but we will go right ahead and get started. And I'm sorry, I've lost my ability to move forward. There we go. So let's go back to the first thing that we talked about in session 1, which in the physical activity session, were the 2 types of stress. So everyone's going to feel stress in their lives. This is going to be typically your positive stress. So your positive stress is considered your eustress, and this is your deadlines at work. It's going to be a looming presentation or speaking in front of people. That's going to allow you to perform kind of at your best. It's going to give you a little edge for your performance. And then you also have this negative stress or de-stress. You have an acute stress, which is periodic. And typically we consider this something like a breakup or maybe a loss in the family. And it can, with the right support system, you can typically get through these pretty easily, or at least manage them. And then there are chronic stresses or toxic stress, and this is abuse, bullying, neglect, and then maybe even addiction. And stress lives on this curve. So there is a performance on the left side of your chart, and then on the bottom part of your chart are going to be your stress levels. And as your stress level goes up, then your performance is going to go up, but then it kind of plateaus or peaks, and we begin to go down the other side. So as the stress level increases past the top of your bell curve, your performance is then going to go down. So our goal is to stay right in that optimal stress column that you see, the second little column, right before you get to fatigue and right before you reach your peak. And hopefully we can perform at our best there and stay out of the fatigue and exhaustion area, stay out of the anxiety and panic, and the breakdown even. So our goal is to stay on the left side of the curve. And to do that, we've talked about several ways to kind of manage those stresses with that physical activity, that mindfulness, and today with that healthy eating. So what happens in your body when you begin to feel stress? Basically, your brain feels that stress, and it tells your adrenal glands to release your adrenaline and your cortisol. And that's going to go to your organs, and that's going to give your organs the signal to start pumping blood in the terms of your heart. It dilates your bronchial tubes, which makes your oxygen flow. Your breath may get deep or rapid, and then your liver's going to turn glycogen into glucose, which is going to allow you to have that energy, or you get that nice burst of sugar, that kind of sugar rush from that adrenaline. And your digestion will begin to decrease because it is allowing stuff to go to that energy to go to other organs. And then your blood pressure is going to begin to increase because your heart rate is going up. So what does that mean in terms of what's happening in your body? So the very first thing that can happen to your body for prolonged periods of stress is you can begin to have chronic high blood pressure and even plaque buildup in your arteries. So we said before, your blood pressure is going to increase as that cortisol and adrenaline run through your body. And then your body is also producing more sugars. So you may have a buildup of plaque. And of course, some of this can be reversed or even managed with a healthy diet and physical activity. Then you're going to have that decreased immune system. And this is a great reminder of how sometimes when we feel stressed, then on top of all of the things that are going on in our lives, we get sick. So our immune system begins to decrease because we are using that energy to go to other places in our body. And then to top it off, that high cortisol level, that's that hormone that's released when you're stressed, can increase your cravings for fatty and sugary foods. So typically when we're stressed, we tend to reach for things that are not as healthy. And the reason for that is that cortisol. So that prolonged period means that we're reaching for those snacky foods more often. So what happens in your brain with stress? And through chronic stress or prolonged periods of stress, over time, you can that can lead to depression and even Alzheimer's. The main reason is that release of cortisol in the body is going to start to it will begin to shrink your brain because your brain is working so hard, or your body is working so hard to do other things, maybe even just kind of trying to exist without, without that fight or flight response. However, like I've mentioned before, some of the stuff can definitely be reversed through physical activity and a healthy diet. But as I said earlier, your brain is going to begin to shrink because of that, that cortisol that's in the body. This high levels of cortisol in the body, as it shrinks the gray matter in the areas that are responsible for learning and memory, are going to be the reasons that you have that Alzheimer's risk increase. In your body, or as you release this cortisol, as your brain begins to shrink in those areas of memory and learning, you're also going to find that the areas that are responsible for emotional control and dealing with emotions is also going to shrink. And as that happens, can lead to depression. So if you want to learn a little bit more about it, and I think some of this is really interesting, I would encourage you to check out these videos, how chronic stress affects your brain and how chronic stress can make you sick. So how do we combat stress? This is kind of my area of expertise. Basically, if you eat enough healthy fats, vegetables, foods that are high in fiber, and we want to say less processed foods, then your body can actually reverse some of the effects that stress is putting on you. And let's kind of go through some of these and explain which one does what. So complex carbohydrates. So why should you eat complex carbohydrates? And those are going to be your whole foods, whole grains, fruits and vegetables. And they are going to increase the serotonin production and the stability and stabilize your blood pressure as a way to reduce stress. So it's important to make sure that you're getting your servings of fruits and vegetables and that you're working on eating more whole grains. And then vitamin C. So consuming vitamin C and or foods high in vitamin C, like oranges or other citrus fruits, are going to reduce your stress and boost your immune system. So we already talked about how the immune system is going to be compromised in times of stress, especially chronic stress. So intake of this vitamin is going to help you lower your cortisol levels and then your blood pressure during high anxiety situations. Another important thing to include in your diet is antioxidants. And antioxidants, like those found in berries, help you to increase your immune system as well as fight off infections as your body is feeling stressed and run down by your chronic stress. Another one that I didn't put up here, but I wanted to go ahead and discuss is vitamins B12, B9, your folate, and your zinc. So if you are deficient in these, you can often have low mood, fatigue, and even cognitive decline, and sometimes even irritability. So if you're finding yourself a little irritable, maybe you want to eat more whole grains and have a little bit of a B12 supplement. But just a reminder, before you go on any supplements, make sure that you talk to your doctor. So up next is magnesium. Magnesium, a lot of people talk about taking magnesium powder to help them sleep. So magnesium has actually been proven to help avoid headaches and fatigue, and an increased intake can help you sleep, especially in older adults. So if you're finding yourself not sleeping, which is often in times of stress, you can go ahead and work on finding a magnesium supplement or adding more leafy greens, salmon, or soybeans to your diet. But again, before adding supplements to your diet, make sure you consult a physician. And then one of my favorites and one of the most interesting to talk about in terms of brain health and development is your omega-3 fatty acids. And most people think of them as coming from fish. So they're going to come from salmon and tuna. Also, they'll come from nuts and seeds. The ones highest would be your flax and your walnut. And this omega-3 fatty acids is going to be something that is more traditional in a Mediterranean type diet, or a diet that includes mostly fish and nuts. And it has been shown to reduce the surge of stress hormones and protect against heart disease, depression, and then you will see, I wanted to tell you about, there is a study that I have linked in the very last slide of this PowerPoint that I wanted to point out. The omega-3 fatty acids actually have been linked to a reduction in symptoms of ADHD, as well as depressive disorder and bipolar depressive disorder, and sometimes, in some instances, PTSD. So if you're interested in this, you're interested in learning a little bit more about how to change your diet, I have some slides that are coming up next, but I wanted to hit on this little study that I found super interesting about omega-3 fatty acids. So they're an integral part in how your brain functions. Your fatty acids are going to, omega-3, 6 are going to be some of your essential fatty acids. And what that means is your body doesn't make it, but it needs it. So you need to find it in sources in your diet. And the best source is always going to be a food source. So your brain needs the omega-3s, which are not in a traditional Western diet. They're in a more Mediterranean type diet. Not saying that that's the only diet that is good for your brain, but it is one that we're going to discuss today because it has the main aspects that I've outlined here. And the omega-3s are actually going to help your brain process and increase that neural function in your brain. So if that kind of turns you on, check out I'm going to see, let me see if I can find the name of this, the Food, Mood, and Brain Health study that I linked at the end of this PowerPoint. You'll find it very interesting. Another thing about your brain is that this organ is a very high metabolic organ, and its demands for nutrients. The average brain consumes about 20% of a person's daily caloric intake. So that's approximately 40 calories a day, or 400 calories a day, excuse me. And it is comprised of about 60% fat and contains high concentrations of cholesterol and polyunsaturated fatty acids, like your omega-3 fatty acids, which is why it's essential to bring those back into your diet. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Your brain eats a lot. We want to make sure that we feed it the things that it needs. So it definitely needs those omega-3 fatty acids that we'll find in fish and nuts. So I talked about the Mediterranean diet just a little bit, but I'm going to explain it to you in more detail. North Carolina State University has a curriculum called Med Instead of Meds. I have at the end of this PowerPoint linked the Med Instead of Meds website if you feel like you would like to check out more information about it. But one of the most important things that I wanted to talk about is, why should you eat meds? There are several studies linked on the Med Instead of Meds website that explain eating the med way protects against cognitive decline by protecting the small blood vessels in the brain. And it also shows a 40% reduction in risk of developing Alzheimer's when eating the med way. And secondly, eating the med way can help you manage your blood pressure. As we mentioned, blood pressure can be increased, especially during chronic stress or in situations of stress. And if you find that your blood pressure is increasing due to your stress levels, then eating the med way may be a way to manage that. Hopefully before you have to go into some type of medication, but it can also be a great addition to medication. Eating the med way can reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease between 30 and 60%. So with this, you will need to eat between 5 and 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day to decrease your risk by as much as 60%. So what are the easy tips to eating the med way? The first one is we're going to eat mostly fruits and vegetables of a variety of colors. We're going to eat our whole grains, snacking or adding beans as a protein source, and then fish for those omega-3 fatty acids, snacking on nuts and seeds, again, helping with those essential fatty acids, utilizing healthy fats like olive oil or oils that are fats that are going to be liquid at room temperature, seasoning with herbs and spices rather than sodium, and also having a glass of red wine occasionally and enjoying our experiences, especially our experiences with others. So being mindful of our eating, being physically active daily, and reducing our sugar intake. So where does eating the med way kind of stand with superfoods? So eating the med way encourages you to eat mostly fruits and vegetables of a variety of colors, eat nuts and seeds, whole grains, your olive oil or oils that are going to be liquid at room temperature. That's my typical go-to statement. And then using beans as a protein source, beans and legumes as a protein source, and then including fish when possible. You also want to limit foods such as sugar, processed meats, and red meats, and fats that are solid at room temperature, as well as those non-lean cuts of meat. Here are some additional food pyramids that may help you in your journey on the med way or to eating the med way. You'll see meats and sweets are at the top. And as we come down all the way to the bottom, we see our diet should be comprised mostly of fruits and vegetables, whole grains when possible, olive oil, beans, nuts, legumes and seeds, herbs and spices. And one of the things I love about these pyramids is that they add physical activity and enjoying meals with others. So having time with a community or with a family member to enjoy those meals. And on the side of the old ways pyramid, you also see to drink water and having your glass of red wine. Both of these pyramids, I have linked the information to on the last slide of this PowerPoint, so you can check them out if you want more information. If a plate is more your way of going, Harvard School of Public Health put out this healthy eating plate that follows the Mediterranean diet as well. You'll see half the plate is fruits and vegetables. You've got whole grains and your healthy protein on the right. And then you'll see your oils up there on the top and drinking mostly water. So before we go, I wanted to talk about a few resources and then also talk about stress and your diet. So it would be silly to say that no one ever experiences stress. We're always going to have stress in our lives, and we're going to have times of chronic stress. And hopefully they're acute stress that we can deal with accordingly and get through. but our main goal is to look at stress as something that we can combat. And we can combat these with the skills that I have given you from session 1 all the way to this session. And if we work to live a healthy life, hopefully our bodies will not have those horrible effects of stress that I've mentioned in all of these PowerPoints. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this presentation. So the resources listed here are all free. You can utilize them at your leisure. The Montana State University one is a great series of little PowerPoints and articles that'll help you dive deeper into your stress management. Old Ways has recipes as well as information about how to eat the med way. Med Instead of Meds has tons of recipes if you'd like to check that out. We typically do 1 or 2 Med Instead of Meds classes a year. So you can join us. Our website is listed down the bottom left. And then the 2 videos that I mentioned earlier are linked here as well, and my contact information. So thank you for joining us today. And I hope that you've enjoyed it.